Welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, the podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to talk about Horizon and American Saga, Part 1. This one is going to be probably a lengthy review just because the movie itself is rather lengthy. This one clocks in at about 3 hours, and I do have quite a lot to say about this film, so do strap in if you are interested in hearing about this film. So, Kevin Costner... I'm going to try so hard to remain sort of upbeat throughout this entire review. It's going to be something. Kevin Costner is one of those actors that for the most part, with some exceptions of course, but for the most part, I look at as being a pretty solid actor. And when he started talking about Horizon, or some of the news started coming out about Horizon, there was a huge sort of kerfuffle that was happening around this film that led me to understand that this was something that Kevin Costner was very passionate about, that this was something of a, life project for him, because not only did he, I imagine, ruin his relationship, or at least, stick a pretty good wedge between his relationship with Taylor Sheridan, because he really wanted to leave Yellowstone in order to start work on this project and be able to give Horizon his full attention. But not only that, his marriage really took a hit, and he went through a divorce over filming Horizon and over, wanting to walk away from Yellowstone. So I understood how important Horizon was to Kevin Costner. And when it comes to sort of passion projects and things of that nature, I understand that a lot of films are like director and actor sort of passion projects, but for the most part, you don't necessarily hear a lot of fallout happening around an actor or director or a showrunner turning their eye onto a passion project, right? So I knew going into this, I was expecting a lot, and coming out of the film, I was a little bit in this sort of situation of having a heck of a lot of guilt for having to talk about or share my opinion with the movie nerds, because when it comes to a passion project like that, I don't want to come on and just completely rip apart someone's, dream film, right, that they have wanted to make for a really long time. But this one, I feel like there are just so many things that are happening with this film that I would be amiss not to at least be honest about what I thought about it, because of the fact that it is a 3-hour film, especially, that I don't want anyone like running out to the movie theater, even though I know a lot of reviews are already out, and giving this like 3 hours of their life without a general understanding of what's going on here. So as far as the plot of Horizon American Saga, I am not sure that I can, with all honesty, give you a synopsis of what this film is about. And that is only because there are consecutive storylines that are happening in this film, a lot of which I feel like that I am not altogether understanding of, if that makes sense. There is a lot of confusing aspects of this film that make it one that is kind of difficult to explain. For the most part, I want to say there are 2 consecutive storylines that are running, that of Kevin Costner's and another one of the character of Lucy and Marigold, that do converge with one another. But there are some, like Sam Worthington's character and some other characters in this, where there is a storyline going on that I am not sure how it connects with the rest of the film. Like, there are so many characters and there is so much going on. And I don't think that this was done in a way that is all that compelling to the audience, or at least it was not all that compelling to me. I don't know who 90% of the characters are in Horizon. I could not probably list you more than one or two names of characters. I don't even know what Kevin Costner's character's name is. That's that's what I walked away with after 3 hours of watching this film. I will also say that if you are going in hopes of seeing something akin to Dances with Wolves, you are not going to find that here. Kevin Costner is sort of a major player in the film, but he doesn't even come into this movie until maybe an hour into it. I feel like Horizon, and I don't know if Kevin Costner would agree with this, probably not, obviously, that's why it's a film. I feel like Horizon gives me a lot of vibes of, if anyone is familiar with the television show Deadwood, but this did remind me of that, not necessarily in entertainment factor, because I feel like Horizon falls drastically short of that for me. But in terms of there are enough characters and enough sort of stories going that I feel like this maybe could have been improved by being a television series instead and picking and choosing some of these things to happen in the first season and then carrying some of those storylines through consecutive seasons. That's the only way that I can see this even ever not being a flop. And I do understand that Kevin Costner, of course, I think he mortgaged his own home to be able to put up like $36 million towards the making of this film. And it lacks so much for me in terms of storytelling. For one, I think the pacing is incredibly off. There were a number of times in this film that I almost got up and just walked out of pure boredom alone and being confused by what was going on. Again, because I didn't know what I was watching for some of it. You don't get introduced to these characters in a way that I feel like most films do introduce you to them. It felt very much like a TNT made for TV film where, some of the acting is just really poor, but other parts of the acting is really great. I did not really get to spend all of that much time, and I feel like the audience just in general, not specifically me, doesn't get to spend all that much time getting to know these characters before it jumps to a different section and a whole completely new set of characters. There also is a lot of issue, at least for me, in knowing when and where a lot of this story is taking place. So as far as the where, there are a number of different times that it'll tell you we're in Montana territory or we're in Wyoming. But I want to say for the first hour of this film, you have absolutely no idea where it's taking place. All that I knew for certain is that we were talking about the Apache First Nations tribe, and that's really it. And I could not tell you like the number of states with which the Apache Nation comprised of, right? I don't know where exactly their people had a range of territory, right? And that makes it very difficult to kind of understand where all of this is happening. And it's difficult to understand when all of this is happening. There are certain time jumps that happen during certain sections of this movie, but then you don't get a feel for kind of how much time is passing later. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but I will just give sort of an example, kind of as spoiler-free as I can. There is one character in this film who, again, I don't know what her name is. She has a daughter. When we are introduced to her, we're introduced to the family, right? They're living in sort of this prairie or valley, and it's her husband, her daughter, and her son that are living in a home. And there is an event that happens where this sort of valley is kind of attacked. There is a lot of horribleness that goes down, and she loses during this event her husband and her son. Now, within a short period of time to me, because again, we're not following these same characters consistently. Like, it is bouncing around between these different storylines. So to me, there is not very much time, or at least the way it's portrayed, there's not very much time between this horrible loss of her family and a future part of the story where she's primping and pampering herself to look good for Sam Worthington's character. And in my mind, I'm just going, ma'am, your husband was just brutally murdered and burned to death. Like, ma'am. But I don't know if it's just because months and months or a year has passed. Like, there is nothing to tell you how long it's been between one event and the other. I don't know if I missed it, if it's just not clear. To me, it's just not clear how long has passed between those two events, because it seems like it's been a very short amount of time. But I feel like if you've just lost your husband horribly, I don't know, I'm not going to be looking around at anyone else after such a horrific event like that happens. But a lot of the things that happen in here, I feel like are such mundane events that, again, it would have fit better maybe inside of a television series where you can have things that don't necessarily push the story forward and are a little bit, two guys having a drink, or, this particular conversation happening, which doesn't necessarily move the plot forward. There are a lot of instances in this where I don't understand where characters have come from. It feels in certain points like there's just a chunk of story missing. There is this character of Marigold who you will have seen in the trailer. She is sort of the prostitute that Kevin Costner meets up with. At a certain part of the story, there is a completely new man that she is talking to as though she has known him for a very long time, and they have like this sort of plan or system worked out, when I swear I have not seen this man before ever in this film. Like, I have no idea who he is. I have no idea where he's come from. I have no idea how she knows him. He just shows up and she is making decisions based off of this man being there. And it is very clear that she knows who he is. Like, it is very confusing to me to sit through stories like that where I have 3 different storylines to follow, but it doesn't seem as though those stories, like it just feels to me in some instances like whoever it was that cut together this film to make it the 3 hours that we are seeing didn't cut it together consecutively where you are watching that story sort of play out. Like, there are quite a few moments in this that are similar to the one with the prostitute where I'm like, who is this person that we're talking to and having this conversation with? Because I feel like I am missing some part of this story that clearly the character isn't missing, but I have not seen. So I'm curious if some of this isn't just a product of someone not telling Kevin Costner that this needed some more work. I don't know if this is something akin to Rebel Moon, where cutting it down for the 3 hours of fitting it in a theater somehow has compromised how the story plays out, and that there is another, director's edition that would make more sense, or where these missing fragments of story would then be put in. But I would not want to sit again through another 3 hours of this. Like, I don't have enough connection to any of these characters in this story to want to pay to see the second half of this in theaters. I think for sure I will wait for the second half of Horizon to make it to digital in order to watch that next 3 hour block. Because for me, this one was just not, it was not the win that I was expecting. We'll put it that way. Like, I was really expecting this to be quite something, considering that Kevin Costner has done similar films before that I think have been quite great. And considering that this was his passion project, that this would have gotten the most of his love and the most of his attention. So I am pretty disappointed by what I have seen here. This, to me, is probably one of the weaker films that I have seen Kevin Costner in. And for it to be something that he directed, this one might be one of my least favorite, even of the ones that he has directed. So I don't know. For me, this is a loss. I would love to know what you guys thought of Horizon and American Saga if you have watched it. Subscribe to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.